by socializing his child. But apparently, their doctors didn't view parenting as men's work, and therefore he wasn't blamed.
Nevertheless, the neglect and constant fighting isolated Richard and caused him to turn inward. This was only exacerbated by the fact that the Chase family moved houses multiple times throughout the 1950s.
According to court documents, they lost their second home in 1960 financial troubles caused in part by medical problems.
A 2016 study published in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine by Roger T. Webb, Karsten B. Peterson, and Pearl L. A. Long examined how moving a child affects a person later. The study determined that substance abuse, psychiatric disorders, and violent offending, moving as a child increases the risk of later developing these behaviors.
Sadly, Richard would not prove to be the exception. In fact, he was an extremely strange child who grew into an isolated, unruly teenager. Beatrice Chase later recalled at the age of 13, young Richard frequently made a mess of it in misguided attempts to cook. But he didn't behave like a typical teenager learning a few recipes.
Counter-terrorist win.
Big puddles on the floor. He never picked up or cleaned anything. Now he was up screwing around and cooking, burning stuff all night long. And it got to be vexing. We couldn't sleep, my daughter and I, in the house. He'd turn the heat on, and he'd turn it up so high, open the windows, let the heat out, and strip off, lying on the couch in the living room.
Although he still it was clear that Richard Chase was developing into a very abnormal person, especially as the gulf between his parents grew.
Richard Sr.'s drinking heavily worsened, and Beatrice frequently accused him of infidelity. By the time Richard was 14, in 1964, the fighting had grown so
City already.
in his own home.
Such was the Richard who entered high school.
Car.
He was described by those but those grades were frequently below average. As a freshman, his report card was mostly C's and D's, but by his sophomore year, F's started to appear frequently.
This should not be a huge surprise, as 1965 was a big
Short.
the Chase family. Year, Richard Jr.'s mother took both him and Pamela out of the house and fled south to Los Angeles. After 8 days, Richard Sr. followed them there and took Richard Jr. back.
Beatrice, however, stayed in Los Angeles for another 4 months before rejoining her family in Sacramento.
That same year, 15-year-old Richard began a relationship with a girl a few years his junior. She spoke about their relationship later, understandably opting not to use her real name.
The ex-girlfriend recalled that while Richard liked her and was attracted to girls, he found the sexual part of their relationship challenging. Throughout their year-long relationship, he was never able to maintain an erection. It was this limitation that caused her to end their relationship in 1966.
Erectile dysfunction is exceedingly uncommon among younger men. Studies suggest that only 5% of men under the age of 40 will experience it. This can be caused by any number of influences, from stress to depression to generalized anxiety. We can only speculate which of these preyed on young Richard Chase. This can be caused, but what we do know is that it was a constant source of frustration and humiliation for him.
Around this time, possibly to cope with the shame surrounding his sexual impotence, or more simply, because he was a teenager in the 1960s, he started experimenting with drugs.
These included marijuana, LSD, and occasionally amphetamines. He let his hair grow out and began to neglect his personal hygiene.
At the age of 15, he had his first run-in with police when he got busted for marijuana.
When confronted by his father, Richard denied any drug use, contradicting the police report. This obvious lie only made his father angrier.
Richard's casual attitude about drugs and increasingly inconsiderate attitude toward his family caused friction between him and his father. They got into heated arguments about Richard's aimless approach to life, as well as his increasingly slovenly appearance.
But these arguments were hardly unique to the Chase family. Most onlookers assumed Richard was just a directionless slob of a teenager. No one thought he was especially dangerous.
Especially when, at age 18, he graduated from Miraloma High School. Despite his poor work ethic and general lack of ambition, he enrolled at American River College and began his first semester there in September of 1968. To everyone's surprise,
Where do you guys want to go?
he did classes.
A few months later, he saw a psychiatrist for
Look, as long as we leave here with the cash, I don't bloody care what happens, okay?
for ED at the time, so the condition remained a constant source of insecurity for Richard throughout his life.
But
Estoy
all
viendo,
this
estoy viendo.
it seemed like he was making an effort to get his life on track.
But then, at the dawn of the 1970s, Richard Chase's strangeness truly began.
Bios.
Market.
Richard stopped attending classes at American River College, taking up the call of the Baptists from his
One very low, nice. Last kitchen.
But unlike many dropouts, Richard Chase did
Excited.
not move back in with his parents. He relished the chance to live away from his family.
In February of 1971, two young residents of Sacramento, Sid Evans DeMarkey and Rachel Statham, found Richard Chase casually sitting on the front lawn outside their house and ended up talking with him. We don't know what their conversation entailed, but by the end of it, DeMarkey and Statham allowed Richard to move in with them and share their rent.
Let's move, come on, hurry
Richard's
up!
father gave him $50 a month to put toward rent, and he paid for the rest with a series of odd jobs.
At first, Richard seemed to be a person being a roommate. This was very far from the case.
Free from any real
Connector, connect one.
Richard's eccentricities grew dramatic.
For reasons that were
That connector.
to his new roommates, he became
Short.
boarding up the door to his
Last
room
city.
and knocking down
Going
his
city.
Terrorists win.
This way, he said, no one can sneak up on me.
His drug use persisted. He was always stoned and was utterly inconsiderate of his roommates. At one point, DeMarkey witnessed Richard leaning out a window while waving a gun at someone walking by the house. Both of them agreed. Living with Richard for any longer would be a nightmare.
They confronted Richard about his habits and told him he would
Throwing smoke. Throwing
Richard
flashbang.
refused. Rather than argue, DeMarkey
Flashbang
and
out.
Statham packed up and
Shortly after his
Grenade out.
Richard, brothers, and some of their friends moved into the newly vacant
No, no.
house.
they experienced the same problem.
CT.
Lie down to fire.
Richard was
Jungle low. Cat low.
out of his room while they had
Flashbang.
guests over.
CT jungle.
Found out his new roommates had a rock band. When they
CT last.
Half HP,
I'm
half
low.
HP CT.
insisted on joining them,
They tried to talk him out of it, but he ignored their obvious lack of interest, banging out the drum alongside them and singing poorly.
eventually, Rachel Statham's brothers somehow achieved what she had been unable to do. They got Richard Chase to pack his bags and leave.
Sometime in late 1970,
Okay, I'm feeling a bit good about this one.
living with his mother on Montclair Street. The relationship between his parents had reached breaking point, and they were on the verge of separating.
And having their
Throwing a Molotov.
antisocial 9-year-old
Connect.
his actions turned even more disturbing and eventually
Smoking.
violent.
Deploying smoke shield.
Up next, Richard Trenton Chase throws two
Throwing
Hey, Edward.
for his family to him.
Fire in the hole.
Hi, listeners.
Short.
Did you know that you can
Short half.
Molotov out.
Nice. Nice.
I've got
Clear
it.
B.
Spotify,
Nice.
All you have to do is follow your favorite podcast. New episodes in library. You can also set up notifications for new episodes when they become available, all for free. Plus, Spotify lets you download your shows free to your phone when you're on the go, so you can easily listen to your podcasts across all devices. That means wherever you are, you can have the best of Spotify right there with you. So why wait? Follow all of your favorite shows free on library.
Molotov out.
Pushing slow. Yes, AWP slow.
By the end of 1971, 21-year-old Richard Trenton Chase back with his parents after his roommates found him impossible to live with.
Still one should be slow something.
Never clean, and acted with complete disregard for the comfort of others.
Never held down a job very long.
You can go B.
Do.
Most
Go B.
sources of income. While living at home, he began
One
to put a
low.
greater financial burden on his mother and father due to
AWP on side.
What the shit?
His mother
To jungle, to jungle.
At one point, he had his mother
Flashbang out.
Maybe one Goku.
causing the DMB accidents. He continued to drive.
Molotov out.
Constant trouble.
In one particular instance, he took a trip to Utah with his two dogs and received several traffic violations while there. He was thrown into jail for the night. His car was impounded, and the two dogs were placed in a shelter.
Throwing smoke.
Beatrice bailed him out, in addition to paying his outstanding ticket fees, which would total around $500 today. But when her son returned home, instead of being grateful, he was tense and agitated. Something about him seemed fundamentally disturbed.
Richard Chase was furious about his perceived mistreatment by the police in Utah. Beatrice asked him what had happened, and according to her, he said, "I think they gave me something in jail, or asphyxiated me in something."
Flashbang.
He seemed to think he had been poisoned by the police, a notion he could never let go of.
This was the beginning of a new pattern in Richard's life. He grew obsessed with his own
Short.
physical condition.
Coming out short.
Something inside him was wrong or poisoned. Though he had not been formally diagnosed with any mental illness, his increasing
AWP done.
delusions, alongside his cripplingly disorganized lifestyle, fit the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders criteria for
That's more
schizophrenia.
left side arc.
On top of these delusions, Richard would experience
That's short.
symptoms of rage, or fits. During these fits, it would be impossible to talk or reason with him, and often
By default.
he turned violent. During one of these arguments, Beatrice became so scared
Window and main.
she struggled to dial the
Molotov out.
And struck her with it.
Fire in the
But
hole.
somehow she'd managed to complete dialing the number. Realizing this,
Short.
he was gone by the time police arrived.
They told her they could put out a warrant for Richard's arrest if she wanted to press charges. Beatrice did not.
What the shit?
Beatrice had always been the more lenient of Richard's two parents.
Okay.
She did not believe seeing her son thrown in prison would help anything.
But Richard's presence was putting an undeniable strain on his mother. In June of 1972, she and Richard Sr. separated. Beatrice would have to simultaneously handle both the stress of living with Richard Jr. and the ennui that came with her failing marriage.
But Beatrice was still determined to help her son. Soon she found a way to get him acclimated to the world, and conveniently, get him out of her hair for a little while.
Had spare room available in her Los Angeles.
Laying down some fire.
While there, Richard worked for his uncle as a bus driver.
His poor work ethic became a problem once again.
Short one.
He refused to clean the bus or replace the engine oil.
Connector and short.
Reminded multiple times that it would not cost him anything. He was soon
Maybe
fired.
go A. We have
Yeah.
Holly Neese claimed that Richard stayed in bed most of the day and roamed the house
Where's the
mostly at
ops?
night.
Richard returned to Sacramento for Christmas of 1972. The
You can go
divorce proceedings between his parents were almost finalized, so far from a he increasingly felt like an outsider in his own family.
Due to conflicting testimony from various family members, Richard was only unclear at the start of 1973. At some point following his parents' divorce in January, he took a job at a local paint store.
One is B.
He only managed to keep it for 10 years. He saved enough money to purchase a special gift for himself.
Market.
What the
April
bitch?
22nd, Richard Trenton Chase found himself at a party at a friend's house. During the revelry, he groped the breasts of one of the other partygoers. Due to this inappropriate behavior, he was asked to leave.
Richard complied, only to return shortly after. He forced his way back into the party, where he was seized by several of the other men there while someone called the police. As he struggled to get free, a .22 caliber pistol fell from his belt.
He had bought the pistol with paychecks saved from working at the police department. Shortly after, the police arrived to arrest him. But he was he resisted arrest and was forced.
The next day, his father
Short
picked
one.
him up. Richard claimed that police had seriously injured him and he wanted to sue. His father managed to talk him out of this, and they left.
Richard Chase was charged with a misdemeanor and forced to pay.
One go back inside our car.
Richard's fixation with his own health only became more dramatic from here. Presumably after this incident,
Connector.
Kill it,
Connector
kill it.
going jungle.
to once again live with his less than thrilled
Welcome.
Jungle still, jungle still.
Left side the jungle.
Arrived on
Yep.
February 10, 1973.
With that jungle.
Okay, I'm setting it down
As well as
here.
accounts of
Last kitchen.
This time, his living habits had become even stranger, saying that the second time he was down here,
Can I get one?
dirty. He came out and used the couch in the living room.
Right up with you.
Thank you.
And everything just dripped over the couch and all over the floor, and he had papers, newspapers. I don't know what he wanted to do with them, but he
Let's
had
go.
them pulled all apart over the house.
He kept her up all hours of the night, supposedly building a speaker for his car. She also claimed to hear him talking to himself.
Connect. Yeah, short.
Throwing a Molotov.
The possibility that he was experiencing audible hallucinations was starting to become
I don't know who.
That's short.
She would come home and find him standing on his head in the corner of the
Short. Or me.
He told her he was trying to get the blood to run back to his
Who dropped one?
He had started to have headaches and believed the root cause was that he was losing blood.
This fixation with not having enough blood would only intensify. He also complained to his grandmother about heart and leg pain.
She also claimed that he would occasionally wrap
Go
his
middle и HP.
with orange slices.
Пизда.
Vitamin C would pass into his brain and
Flashbang.
soothe his headaches.
Throwing a Molotov.
His grandmother put him on a plane to South. Like his parents had two
B clear.
Richard at his most volatile.
This side.
The
Sandwich.
Richard Sr. believed his son just needed to man up and take charge of his life. Richard Jr. did not heed his father's frequent demonstrations, and more often than not, their conversations devolved into arguments.
Beatrice listened to what her son was going through, but everything he said only caused her more distress. He seemed to believe he was deeply sick on the inside. In his words,
Flashbang
his
out.
head
Window is open.
he thought there was something wrong. He was nervous. His
Molotov
heart
out.
was stopping, and he had something wrong with him.
These beliefs traced back to his arrest,
Go B, go B.
where he
One B.
was poisoned by the police.
Yeah, zombie.
Obsession with his
Smoking.
own internal illness.
Richard began to decorate his room with images of hearts and organs cut out from a copy of medical journal Gray's Anatomy. He seemed curious about what he thought was happening to his
10 HP. Tetris.
never properly articulated. He believed that bones were growing out of the back of his head.
He pleaded with his mother for medical help, and she started calling doctors. The third doctor who examined him,
CT.
Dr. Donald Ansel,
Throwing flashbang.
had a psychiatric diagnosis of major proportion.
Deploying smoke shield.
They were unable to find a satisfactory diagnosis
I'm
to
gonna fix
Richard's
this bomb now.
multiple issues. Finally, on December 1st,
Haha.
1973, he walked into an American River Hospital emergency room.
He told the nurses there that he couldn't breathe, and that someone had stolen his pulmonary artery, stopping his blood flow.
Dr. Irwin Lyons described Richard Chase in his initial report as a filthy, disheveled, deteriorated, and foul-smelling
Flashbang.
white male. Lyons diagnosed Richard with chronic paranoid schizophrenia.
Molotov
although he
out.
said that the
Short.
possibility of
Under, блять. Of course, нахуй.
use could not be
Richard likely had not subsided.
Marijuana was his most common drug of choice, but he's rumored to have explored more dangerous substances as well. If Richard was suffering from substance-induced psychosis, it would most likely have been temporary and treatable.
Ace if you win.
Scenario for Dr. Lyons.
But any chance of
Throwing
long-term
smoke.
observation was derailed after 2 days, when Dr. Lyons had a hostile confrontation with Beatrice Chase,
Throwing flashbang.
to discharge her son. The exact details of this confrontation are unclear, but Dr. Lyons' report described Beatrice as highly aggressive
Grenade out.
to the medical staff.
Despite the acrimonious circumstances surrounding his discharge, Richard's perceived pain seemed to subside for a while. He was provided with medication and an oxygen tank for panic attacks, and over the course of a few months, the chronically emaciated man actually managed to put on 20 pounds.
Once again, accounts from Richard's family, particularly his parents, differ on this. But Beatrice claims that this respite lasted 2
Oh, I
years,
wanna save our cash this round.
1974 and 1975. Richard Sr. claims it was much shorter.
Either way,
Let's
Beatrice eventually started to notice her son's troubling
Okay.
behavior patterns creeping back into their home. Like her mother, Polly Neese, had witnessed early in 1973, Beatrice started hearing her son have unsaid conversations with
Okay.
himself.
Beatrice felt helpless, unable to relieve her son's suffering. Every time she attempted to intervene,
Stairs
she
one.
became more agitated. This war on
I have smoke stairs.
from her inability to help.
She and his sister Pamela could only watch as Richard relapsed.
Connect off, connect off.
Richard was no longer just yelling at his family members. He started hurting them.
I have CT.
Up next, Richard Trenton Chase warns of something unrecognizable and deeply disturbing.
Do you have a secret you keep to the grave? If you do, you're not alone. Everyone has skeletons in their closet, but some people's secrets are bigger than others. I'm Stephania Hageman, host of Parcast's newest show, Deathbed Confessions. Each week, we dive deep into the most explosive things people have admitted to while drawing their last breath. Fake identities, heists, illicit
Flashbang.
drugs, and even government cover-ups.
Nice. Oh.
CT. Low.
Fire in the hole. Line down to fire.
I'm very low jungle.
When he was discharged from the
Jungle last.
23-year-old Richard Trenton Chase seemed like he had the potential to overcome his schizophrenia symptoms and return to a normal life. He took his medication, started exercising, and abandoned all of the strange habits that disturbed everyone who lived
Yellow, take AVP, yellow.
The fantasy period was only a temporary reprieve. As the years rolled on,
Man.
the paranoid delusions returned, and he began treating his family with increasing
Flashbang
cruelty.
out.
On 2 occasions, he told his mother Beatrice to
Low, under palace.
Oh, go B.
Minus 81.
He again became prone to random bouts of anger and would take out his fury on whatever furniture, glass, or wall was nearby. On one occasion, his rampage grew so violent that Beatrice and Pamela had to flee the house while he destroyed.
Short, yeah? Short.
Richard Sr. two men on their front lawn.
I'm going to plant this thing.
His rage also began to manifest itself in more sinister ways.
According to Beatrice Chase, Richard began to torture the family dogs.
Kitchen.
He would take
Main.
the paw
And
of the
kitchen
dog and
area.
cut it with a pocket knife.
Low.
On one end, the dog snapped
Kitchen.
until it almost broke. The poor dog had difficulty eating solid food for some time afterwards.
Nice.
About her son's habits, Beatrice arranged with her ex-husband to get Richard a place of his own.
But now that he no longer had anyone watching him, Richard's habits started to get even more perverse.
Richard started taking trips to the neighborhood of
I play connector.
where he visited a rabbit breeder. He purchased a number of rabbits from this man and brought them back to his home.
He would then eviscerate the rabbits and drink their blood.
I believe so.
Sometimes he would put their entrails into a blender and drink the gory sludge.
When his father visited to play chess, he noticed the presence of these animals. He asked his son what the rabbits were for. Richard said that
But they're upstairs, what the fuck, man?
already used to his son's odd behavior, Richard Sr.
The jungle.
laughed the comment off.
1976, Richard Sr. paid his dues. He seemed normal at the time, as normal as Richard ever was. After a completely uneventful evening.
The next day, Richard Sr. came by to visit his son again. When Richard
He found Richard lying on the floor, too limp to move. The stench of vomit filled the air. Richard had injected himself with liquid blood sometime after his dad left the night before, believing his blood levels were critically low.
Richard Sr. rushed his son to the hospital. When he was
Here we
admitted,
go.
Richard gave his own bizarre reasoning for what had happened. He told the physicians that he had been poisoned by a rabbit he ate, which had battery acid in its
Yeah,
He was diagnosed
it's full B, full B, full B, guys.
and placed under a 72-hour hold.
Nice loss with ups.
physical condition
He go to you.
but he justifying
Grenade!
his behavior to the doctors.
Blood because of saying that his body was falling apart. Despite this, he refused to join any of the hospital's exercise programs or group therapy.
On May 19th, he was once again discharged. His doctor, Michael Buckley, wrote in his final report, uncooperative with treatment throughout the course of his hospitalization.
Time to shove off.
Against Richard's wishes, he was admitted to Beverly Manor, an institution for mental illness patients. He protested the whole way,
Smoke star.
insisting he was only hospitalized for weakness.
Fire in the
There was no
hole!
reason for him to be admitted to a mental
Flashbang!
Out mid, out mid.
While initially withdrawn
I
and
have flash.
he eventually started to
Deploying
socialize
a smoke
with
shield.
his fellow patients and some of the staff. Despite prescribed medication, he showed no signs of losing interest in drinking blood.
Ah, here, here,
He
here.
would frequently describe eating raw staff wrote that he suspected Richard was killing animals on the property.
Two birds had been found lying outside his room earlier that week. Their heads had been torn off. Richard had been found with his shirt and face covered in blood. When asked about this, he said that he cut himself while
Oh, they're
shaving.
bound to screw up at some
During
point.
his 4
Don't forget
months
that.
stay in Beverly Manor, Richard was given
Throwing
the nickname
flashbang.
Dracula for his obsession with blood. His
Here's
horrific
one.
pastimes grew so disturbing that parents identity
But after this incident,
Here's one.
Richard Chase showed some signs of responding to
Nice.
treatment. With cautious optimism, the doctors began to prepare for
The controversial decision of the hospital. One of his
Under.
peers recalled, "When we heard he was going to be released, we all raised hell about it, but it didn't do any good."
On September 29, 1976, Dr. Buckley wrote that Richard had notably improved since his admission, and that his potential for further improvement was fair. Although his prognosis was cautiously
Come on, let's get this started.
those around the institution insisted that he be discharged to make room for other patients in the overcrowded facility. Now, 26 years old, Richard was released into the custody of his
Flashbang.
parents. And with the sincere
Flashbang
belief
out. Grenade
that
out.
guiding hand
Last 2 mid.
His
Come on.
parents were
Grenade
in
out.
conservatorship of him, an agreement that required them to pay his bills. The paperwork signed by Beatrice indicated that he had to live with them.
Either Beatrice
So what?
Richard's younger sister Pamela would drop groceries off at Richard's apartment, and Richard Sr. would regularly supply his son. But when Beatrice came to visit, she was distressed by what she saw.
The medications Richard had been prescribed rendered him listless and constantly drained. He had never been more manageable, but Beatrice looked at him and saw a zombie. This wasn't her son.
Mrs. Chase, without consulting any psychiatrists or medical
Throwing
professionals,
flashbang.
took it upon
Grenade out.
herself to wean
Flashbang
herself
out.
off the prescribed medication.
Within a year, Richard Trenton Chase was no longer taking any officially prescribed medication. He had no visits to outpatient care, no psychiatrist,
Oh, low, super low.
made no contact with Beverly Manor to inform them of his perceived recovery.
His energy restored, Richard was quickly back to his old ways. He would sleep during the day
Last
and
bits.
at night. A frequent practice was the country club
76. Good job.
his age.
He reconnected
Those
with some
big
old
fellas turned out
acquaintances
to
from his
be not
earlier
so
years,
big,
who
did they?
found him surprisingly nostalgic, mostly talking about their high school days. But despite his best efforts, he wasn't able to hide his unusual behavior.
His paranoia alarmed many of his